Hello and welcome to our new monthly show called Special Editions. What this is once a month we do one of these episodes and we have a special guest on and we talk about a specific subject. Today we're going to be talking about instrumental music because my guest today is guitarist Don Lennon. I've had Don on before. We've interviewed him many times because I'm a real fan of his music. And so what inspired today's episode, like I said, Don is an instrumentalist. Puts out great albums. This is his latest one. So why don't we start with that, Donnie? You can tell people what's the name of the new album, how they can get their hands on it.
Okay. Well, the new album is called Monumental, and you can get it directly through me, or you will put a link for my website, which actually has a link to get a copy of a hard copy of the CD if they want. It's also on all the digital platforms as far as Spotify and you name it, it's on it. So
Yeah, when you put this up, I'll try to include a link there. But so what we thought we'd do today is Donnie and I are going to pick five like instrumental tracks that we think are worth talking about. Kind of each have like a top five list, if you will. So I will get started, Donnie, and let's see what you think about this. Mine, my number five, let's see, was Mick Mars. It's off the latest Mick Mars solo album. It's an instrumental track called LA Noir. Now, it's the only instrumental track on Mick's album, and it's a real rockin' tune. I mean, it's kind of a modern day kind of version of Eruption, but it's really got a real rockin' feel to it. And I thought it was worth mentioning because, again, Mick Mars is typically thought of as a blues kind of rock influenced bass type of guitarist. And this is really kind of not quite metal, but it's getting there. And it's for Mick Mars, it's a really rocking tune. So I urge people to check that out. And of course, that's a tune that just came out this year in 2024. And the album came out like in early February. And so a lot of people kind of forgot about it. So I thought that was worth the mention. So let's get started with your number five now, Donnie.
all right. Well, my number five would have to be Cliffs of Dover by Eric Johnson.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, he's definitely an influence of mine. If you listen to my new album, I got a song called Visions of Eternity, and it has that Eric Johnson style feel to it.
Yeah.
So I he's definitely an influence, but he's not like my main influence.
Sure,
So,
sure.
but he's definitely a great guitarist and one of my not my favorites, but he's definitely in my top 10, if you will, as far as like who I enjoy listening to.
Now, let me ask you, when listening to instrumental music, especially these guitar type of tunes, what do you feel makes it takes to make a really great instrumental track? Because back in the '80s, a lot of our favorite guitar heroes were putting this stuff out and putting out albums worth of material, and a lot of it sounded like an angry bee. But to you, what does it take to get your attention when you're listening to these instrumental tracks?
Okay, well, first of all, you got to have a good rhythm. I mean, it's not like you got to have like I'm an '80s guy, just like
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
So you got to have that rhythm that kind of stands out, and then not just keeping the same thing going over and over again, but then you got to have a bridge or a change in there. So I think that's the first step is to get a good rhythm with a bridge and a couple changes in there, kind of switch it up so it doesn't get boring.
yeah.
And
See,
then the
that's the thing.
second,
A lot of those people when they were releasing those albums, like in the '80s, I mean, they really were master shredders, and they got that skill to do that. But a lot of those albums, you get like 10 tracks sounding exactly the same, kind of like what you're saying now. Um, in prepping for today's show, I was listening to your album you sent me. I love the fact that the autograph that you see, folks. What a great guy Donnie is. But anyways, what I noticed about your song is, well, I should say the whole album overall, is when you listen to stuff, typically, Don, you're trying to think, what does this remind me of? And I can't say that any of your influences like really come leading out, but it's very, your playing seems to be a big part of it to me. It's very emotive. Like you listen to this stuff and you get like certain feelings come over you when you listen to it. I mean, I'll give you a great example of what I'm talking about. Probably my favorite song on this album is Beyond This Life. I mean, I kind of was kind of I envision you like as you're getting ready to play your last guitar lick before you go up to meet the old great mighty God, and you're rising up to the heavens. Again, it sounds crazy, but it's kind of I'm just envisioning. The as I'm listening to the music, that's kind of what I envision.
No, you're absolutely right. That's kind of like what my when I was writing that song. Of course, if you listen to the intro real close, it's very Top Gunning.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
like first take off. It's
Yeah.
like so. I had that Top Gun feel sound, and then once it kicks in, I wanted the first part of it to be, and you've heard the song, so you know what I'm talking about. That kind of like an out of body experience, like a
I got
spacey.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Or
Yeah,
even like a flying saucer is flying over and you're being memed up or something. Your music is
right. Or something, something that kind of because I used a lot of delay and a lot of distortion in that first part. And then of course, when you get into the Eddie Van Halen tapping part, I left a delay on there just to give it that overtone, if you will.
sure.
And I wanted it to kind of stand out differently from all the other songs on the album.
Yeah. I
So
mean, certain guitar players you listen to, and without even looking at the album cover, immediately that you're listening to Marty Friedman or Steve Vai or Eddie Van Halen.
yeah.
But and it's all good. But what I thought would make this such a fun topic is again, typically when anybody listens to a song, especially a song that's got lyrics, it's a little easier to kind of if you really try to follow the lyrics and follow what the person wrote the song about, it kind of tells the story in the lyrics, and it's a little easier to pick that up on. But with instrumental music, it's not as easy. Typically most songs start off with the guitar riff, and then they'll work the lyrics into it. But a lot of times, based on an emotion, or maybe it's they want to write a love song to their girlfriend or a wife, and then the words come later. But again, instrumental tracks are more emotive, or it could be based, like you said, you have a like, hey, I want to create a guitar solo sounds kind of like a race car or something. You know, um,
Yeah.
some of your stuff is like that too, and it makes it a lot more fun, I think, for the listener because it doesn't sound like every other guitar shred album out there that's come before. It makes it stand out.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm not trying to be one of those guitarists that everybody puts in a box where they sound like everybody else. Like John Petrucci, great guitarist, love the guy. But a lot of his stuff sounds like Yngwie Malmsteen. It's
Sure,
like
sure.
because he's trying to play a million miles an hour. Me, I'm trying to be more, as you say, emotive and creative, and take people on a journey. Like I said, like my music is a kind of is like you can just pop it in your car and just drive for hours.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and it doesn't even matter if it doesn't have lyrics. And I think that's like what makes you such a great guitar player because you're not trying to be the next Eddie Van Halen. You're doing what you do, and I'll let people in on a real fun part of your story, Donnie, because you shared this with me. I'll never forget the first time I interviewed you, and I'm listening to your music, and I'm like, and this guy must have been playing for years. I think you told me, I'd never really played. I just kind of picked up a guitar like 9 years ago, taught myself, and voila. And I'm like, you listen to Donnie's album or any of this stuff on YouTube, and you'd be like, man, this guy must have played all his life. But I mean, I'm just so impressed. But again, that's just, I guess, part of your dedication to your instrument.
yeah, like I said, I mean, with rhythms and power chords and things like I've been playing those for a while, since I was younger. Then I set the guitar down until 20 what was it 2017 2018 somewhere around there, and then I picked it back up and I started taking lessons to learn how to play lead guitar because I never learned leads or
Yeah,
anything, and this guy kind of and I guess I just picked it up, and then because in 2020 was the first album, and
yeah.
then 2022 came second gear, and here we are 2024, and I got the brand new one out, and it's just been blessing because I got Casey from Queensryche to play with me, and
Yeah.
and he's kind of guided me, and then I'm friends with the band from Sweden. They're called Darkwater, and they've been kind of a mentor to me as well.
Oh, that's cool. And now, my number four on my list is Steve Vai, and I got to tell you, Steve, he's very much like Joe Satriani. They're one of two guys I think that can get away from out instrumental music because they're just so great. They can really do it all. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I heard Steve Vai was on the David Lee Roth album from 1986, "Eat 'Em and Smile."
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know about you, Donnie, but the first time I heard that song "Yankee Rose," I mean, he's like saying, David, and he's like, his guitar is literally speaking to me.
yeah, wah, wah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And so the song, Steve Vai song I chose was actually off of Steve's 1990 solo album, Passion and Warfare, was for the song "The Audience is Listening." Now, a couple
oh,
things with that. Again, vocals are kind of ensued throughout the song, but not really. It's mostly an instrumental track. It's kind
hmm.
of reminded me like a lot of Van Halen's "Hot for Teacher," partly because of a video, partly because the teacher and Steve talking back and forth throughout the song. But even though there's not lyrics, and there is, it's kind of the track is all over the place. And for an instrumental track, it really did its job. It kept my attention throughout the entire song.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you say that it kind of reminds you of Hot for a Teacher. Even if you take away,
The video.
the theme of it and everything like that, just the way that song is,
Yeah.
it kind of has that same kind of beat, and it
Yeah.
has that same kind of feel to it. So yeah, it does.
I mean,
Now that you mention it does remind me of Hot for Teacher.
I think the video really makes it that way. I mean, Van Halen's "Hot for Teacher" video is like had sexy girls and all that. This didn't, but this was more like of a school class crazy ass teacher, and Steve Vai
Yeah.
going crazy and rocking everybody out. And what's interesting, like the "Hot for Teacher" video, you had a little Steve Vai, pretending to be Steve Vai, and then the guy that was actually the kid that played the little Steve Vai. He was in this band that Steve produced. I think the kid's name was Thomas McRuckin. Bad for Good was the name of the band, and Steve produced them. But
Okay.
that's how that band kind of had a little bit of a career, not much. But so that's one of the first tracks to me, instrumental tracks I ever heard that really got my attention, and it kept my attention all the way through it. And first time I'd ever seen an instrumental track have a music video made for it. So I thought, hey, it's worth being on the list. What's your number four, Donnie?
I also like Steve Vai, and I'm going to have to say the song "For the Love of God"
Oh,
that
I
he
love
did.
that one. Yeah,
That for me is a lot of you talk about emotions and feelings. I mean, you could tell he kind of went off and put a lot of feeling into that one and some emotion, and and you can hear it as that song plays through and everything.
it's
I think
it's funny because that's off the same album, and those are like my two favorite Steve Vai tracks. I don't want to just say of all time, but like off, especially off that album. And I can't really. I mean, and like you said, it goes from like the audience is listening to real rock and kind of almost metal tune, and then "Love for the Love of God" is just very melodic, and yet he takes you to a different emotion, and that's what makes Steve Vai too. He's tried on some of his albums. He's not the greatest singer, obviously. He's more of a guitar player, but he's done vocals, had other people like Devin Townsend come in and sing on some of his albums. And so,
right.
it's kind of interesting music. I mean, because he did play with Frank Zappa, kind of some of it reminds me of Frank Zappa type of music. He's all over the musical map, and that's what makes Steve just such a great player.
Yeah, he's definitely. I would say, yeah, he's probably my number as far as my influences. He's probably my number two for influence.
And he also put out this great little EP a number of years ago called "Alien Love Secrets," where he's all made up like in this alien makeup. And
I have
there's this
found
one
that.
track that just I love. It doesn't even. It's kind of like nonsensical. Doesn't mean it, but he just starts like saying "Yeah, yo, gack." That's the name of the
Yep.
song, and it's just crazy and it's amazing. Well, I just when I think he can't take me to a different place, he does. With a song like that.
Oh yeah, I mean he's definitely got some and every time he creates a new album, I think the last one he came out with was that the Hydra, where he
Yeah,
had
and
a special.
what's interesting about that is he had trouble recording that because he just had to have hand surgery or something, and so it was a little more difficult for him to play the guitar, but he's back to doing what he does. And so, I mean, he's a real warrior. At his age now, he's still putting out great albums like that, and even having to have hand surgery, and he's still doing it.
That he definitely is, and you know what? I give him credit because, like you said, he's been around for a long time, and doing what he does. There's, and there's not a huge audience for
Yeah,
instrumental. I mean, there is some, but it's not like Disturbed or
sure.
it's not crowds like that going to see them.
And it's funny when
Even
you find out Steve Vai was taught by, actually, Steve Vai and Kirk Hammett were both taught by Joe Satriani when they were coming up. He was their
that's right.
guitar teacher. And
Yeah,
and very much like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, these are two guys that they can actually go out, and they were one of the first two guitar players to ever do it. Go out and actually put together a full concert centered around instrumental music. You wouldn't typically think somebody would go and spend a decent amount of money to go to a concert like that, but they're so amazing what they do that people are entertained. They're wowed.
oh, every time. Every time Satriani comes around. Actually, they have that tour they do together called the
G3.
G3. Yeah, I've been to probably 5 of them, and yeah, they're just they're amazing.
I heard we're going to do another one next year, so we got to be on the lookout for that. Okay, so what's your number 3 then, Donnie?
Well, I'm sure you know who Tosin Abasi is.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's another guy that super talented. He did one of those G3 tours too. I remember.
Yeah, he didn't do the G3. He did the one with Steve Vai. It was
Yeah,
called the Generation Axe.
there you go. There you go.
Yeah,
He's one of those guys you hear about, and he makes a ton of money as he should. But he's still very under the radar. A lot of people, unless you're really into that guitar community, might not have even heard of him.
he's amazing. That guy, he makes a regular. Well, he's got a special guitar. It's 8 strings. He makes them.
Yeah,
He had somebody make them, but he makes that guitar sound like a bass guitar, and
sure.
they like the slap bass and stuff. But my favorite song from them is called "Physical Education," and oh, man, it's just so different.
Mhm.
It's not like any other band I've ever heard or any other thing, and I think that's what makes it stand out for me
Yeah.
because it just like it's like nobody else is doing what they do.
Oh, that's true. My number 3 is actually Van Halen from 1978, the self-titled album Eruption. And again, it's not to me, it's like maybe it's the ultimate Eddie Van Halen track. Every once in a while he'd throw out an instrumental track, but that's got to be the ultimate because if you think about it, that was the first thing most of us heard from Eddie Van Halen. I mean, if you go back to the very first time you put on the debut album, that's the first thing you hear, just Eddie coming out, getting you ready to give you a major kick in the ass, with the rest of the album.
Yeah, I think also that was the first time I think anybody has done that kind of tapping, that fast
Yeah, yeah,
tapping.
yeah,
Before that, you didn't see that or you never heard it, and I
yeah,
think that's what made that so iconic. And Eddie Van Halen is probably one of the best guitarists that has ever lived in the
yeah.
in
And
this
I always
generation.
heard how David Lee Roth in the early days would tell Eddie, "Hey Ed, when you're up on stage, don't don't let people in the audience see what you're doing, how you do that. Turn your back to the audience." But I guess the brothers, I just got done reading Alex Van Halen's book. It's a great read, and but I really urge people to do because I also got the audiobook, and I enjoyed both, but the audiobook is quite an experience because Alex is actually telling the story in his own voice, and that's a little different reading of a book, and it gives you and even hear him telling like just like cracking up and saying some funny things, and it gives it a kind of a different look. But anyways, he was also talking about that, and he's like, yeah, back in the early days, Dave would tell Ed, turn your back to the audience. He goes, don't let them see what you're doing. He says, but me and my brother were like, we will never turn our back on the audience. So I was interested to see that they have different perspectives.
Sure, yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, Van Halen. See, personally, I like the first 2 albums from Van Halen.
Yeah,
Diver Down was okay, but it wasn't as good as like Women and Children First
sure.
in their first album. And then when Sammy Hagar came in after David Lee Roth left the band, it kind of gave it a new what do you call it, a new style, if you will.
But
But the
what
thing
it
of it,
was, I've heard Sammy talk about is the fact that first of all, him and Dave are different types of singers, but he was saying, Ed wanted to concentrate during those years more on focus a lot more on the keyboard. So a lot of those songs were more keyboard oriented. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story, Donnie. I had the chance to interview Derek Shereni, legendary keyboard player, played with
yeah,
Whitesnake and everyone under the belt. But anyways, Alice
theater.
Cooper. But he was telling me what a Van Halen fan he was back in the day, and he's like, I couldn't believe when I got that 1984 album, keyboards, and he says, I'm a keyboard player. This comes from a guitar, but I was like, um, where's the guitar? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And what I was going to say with this, with the Sammy Hagar years, is they went from like Van Halen was like that classic rock, and
Sure.
but then during the Sammy Hagar years, it was like they just, I don't know, what do they commercialize? Is that the word?
Yeah. I mean, more radio friendly. I mean,
Yeah.
they were a little everything with Dave, but it's more of a classic rock sound. With Sammy, see the thing too is they weren't as limited with Sammy because he could sing all. Dave's voice, I'm told, is he's very limited with what he did, but yet they worked around that and they worked to everybody's strengths, and so they're just different types of singers, and that has a huge um, part to do with that. Now, okay, so what's your number? Who's your number two, Donnie, on your list?
Number two would be John Petrucci from Dream Theater.
Oh, okay.
Um, I mean, he only has two solo albums, but he's
Yeah,
got, all those albums with Dream Theater,
sure.
and just, you know, for the instrumental side of it, well, that's the thing. I mean, he's also played with Liquid Tension Experiment in the earlier years and all that stuff, which is nothing but instrumental.
Sure.
But anything he touches, no matter what it is, singing, non-singing, it's just gold. It's just
Yeah.
this guy knows what he's doing.
Kind of like Steve Vai. Anything he puts out, I know I'm going to dig. I will go
Oh,
out and get the album.
he can sit on the toilet and sound good.
There you go. Um, my number two actually is Jimi Hendrix and Star Spangled Banner from Woodstock. And again, first of all, Jimi Hendrix is a player, very much like a lot of these guys we're talking about. He could play, he could like really rock the house, and then he could do something like see Lady or Hey Joe. Now the Star Spangled Banner, I picked that because I'm all about being patriotic, and but it being patriotic in a real rockin' way, if you know what I mean. And
Yep.
what's interesting is this is a version where he's not singing the vocals; it's just an instrumental version, and I love it for that reason because it's kind of a different take of a standard Star Spangled. And another thing we should mention about Jimi Hendrix, I mean, I've seen his performance like at Woodstock and videos you can go on YouTube, and the guy, man, he was a monster. I mean, he played the guitar with his teeth. He could play it upside down, play it backwards, all over the place, and it's like you really haven't seen anything like that since.
No, you really haven't. I think there's only one or two artists that play with their teeth, or or
Yeah.
their whatever there is. And but yeah, you're right. I mean, it doesn't seem to be like, no. What I'm finding out is with the newer music and
Yeah.
everything, nobody wants to be creative. Everybody's just up there. They're playing. They don't really do much. I mean, the music sounds good. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. I mean, I can name 100 bands that are awesome, but they don't do all that, that cool stuff like we
Yeah.
saw.
And Steve Vai that we mentioned a lot throughout today's episode. Again, he's hit a place in his career. He's had problems with his hand the last couple of years. He's had surgery, and he's at a point where he doesn't need to continue to put out new music. He could just go out there and do shows. But you would think like, how is this guy able to stay so creative and everything he puts out sounds new and fresh? And so that's another thing I got to give guys like Steve Vai credit for the fact that they're continuing to pump out new music.
Right. And I think, well, from a personal aspect on that, it's like, I didn't think I was going to be able to write this new album. I was thinking, after second gear, all right, until I got an actual band together and, working with other people, I wasn't really. And then I don't know what it was, but my skills have grown and everything.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I get more influence. And of course, one of my other influences is Queensryche, and you could probably tell that from the first
Casey.
track.
Yeah.
Hi, Casey.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's been a blessing, man. This guy is so awesome. I don't know if people, whoever's out there watching this, Casey Grillo, he used to be with Camelot, now he's at Queensryche, but I know him on a personal level. He lives in my area, and he drummed, as I said, he drummed on the new album. But this guy kind of like he's the one that told me like the album cover was done by the artist that does Queensryche's album cover.
Sure.
So he steered me in all the right directions with this new album. Oh yeah, that's why his name's on that sticker is on there. I mean,
Yeah.
And but if you listen to the first album, it's got a Queensryche sound. It's got that. Yeah, and basically what I did is that song from the Mindcrime album, the first Mindcrime, it was called Breaking in the Silence. So if you listen closely, the main riff on my new song is Breaking the Silence in reverse.
Okay. And again, my number one I'm going to end on is I don't know if you guys have heard of Dick Dale, a legendary kind of surf type guitar player, goes back to the 1960s.
Like Beach Boys and everything?
Well, actually, before the Beach Boys, but it's kind of just I'm going to write this down so people can check it out. But it's the name of the song is Missarillu, and it's just kind of like and then kind of like you imagine playing the guitar, surfing. It's really just something to hear. So I will post it when we post this. So what's your number one, Donnie?
My number one is Satriani, of course, because he's my main influence. Actually, a lot of the tones that I use is similar to what he uses on his music. But I would have to say, oh gosh, I mean, he's got so many great songs. Crystal Planet is good. Surfing with the Alien, of course.
That's the obvious one, yeah. And that believe it or not, is like 30 something years old. That album just turned, I think.
It's like 40. No.
Yeah, something like that. I have lost track, but anyways, the interesting thing too about Joe Satriani. I mean, he's had the opportunity, to like when Richie Blackmore left Deep Purple, he did a little Japanese tour, and they offered, hey Joey, let's have you join Deep Purple, replace Richie Blackmore. He's like, I don't want to fill those big shoes, so I got to give it to him. Donnie, we're about ready to run out of time, but I want to thank you for coming on to do this. I'll have you come back so we can talk more about the new album. But again, this is a new album, Monumental. I urge people to go out and get this, and we'll be posting this next week, and I'll be announcing it probably going up Monday or Wednesday. You take care, Donnie, and have a great week, and thanks so much.
No problem, Jason. And always remember, got to be rising higher.
That's right. Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.
All right. See you.